to the Engadget podcast for the week of July the 22nd. My name is Brian Heater. I'm joined, let's start with Dana. It's been a while. Dana Woolman is on my left.
Hello.
How have you been?
I've been well. How about you?
Good. Tell us everything that's happened since the last time we saw you on the podcast. We have time.
This
This is our
it's been a slow week, right?
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah, literally nothing has happened in the world of tech this week. What have you been up to, Dana?
I took a boxing lesson.
Okay. Any other classes that you've taken that you'd like to tell us about? No, nothing.
I'm training for a marathon.
Okay.
you're searching.
Yep. What does marathon training involve?
Cross training.
Okay.
Yeah, which might include boxing.
Okay.
Might include
Some
boxing.
core work.
A lot of
What kind of core work?
sitting on those big balls.
Crunches.
Lots of
Those
crunches.
balls?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. It's important to have a strong core. I
It
say.
is.
Have you ever tried one of those little Terrence O'Brien? Have you ever tried one of those little office balls or those giant office balls?
Yeah, actually, I use one at home.
You use one at home?
for
Is
my
your
chair.
core super strong?
No.
Okay, so it's not working at all. Can you just not afford an actual chair?
That might be the case.
What's the back situation on one of those things? Like, does your back end up hurting at the end of the day?
Oh yeah, I've kind
Okay.
of swapped it out recently.
Okay, so weak core, back pain.
Yep.
Any immediate benefits to speak of in those office balls?
They're very cheap.
Okay,
That's
so
about it.
So you have saved up enough money to go to Expand in New York in
Yes.
November, right?
AOL is making me pay my own.
You know
way.
that, yeah. You know
I
you're
have
not
to buy a
getting
ticket.
to the show, right?
Yeah.
So this is going to be November 9th and 10th, as we mentioned before, and the reason that I bring it up is because we've actually gone so far as announcing the first round of speakers, looking pretty good.
Yeah.
We've see. I don't know. We've actually got a lot more lined up right now, and we keep going back and forth of, about how many to announce at once. I say we just do it all. At
Just
once.
like vomit
crazy.
all of them up
Exactly.
on the site.
Exactly. But I think we're doing it in fits and starts right now. So we've got the CEO of Pebble, pretty exciting.
Which is cool.
Yeah. Peter Molyneux, big game developer.
Yeah, that's huge. I'm excited about that one.
Over Pebble.
I don't know.
What if because like to me the great thing about Expand was watching all these people from different companies come together, do collaborations. What about gaming for the Pebble?
Maybe Molyneux will make a game for it.
Maybe Molyneux's going to make a game for the Pebble.
You're gonna have to tap it repeatedly. To chip
Centipede,
away.
you could play on there possibly. Some version of Pong. I mean, this literally
Somebody
the
will make
sky's the limit.
Minecraft for
Yeah.
Pebble at some point. I'm sure.
Yeah, the sky is the limit. I mean, if you could play Doom on your TI-83, you could probably play Minecraft on one of those things. Right?
Yeah. Is there Doom for the Pebble? There has to be. Somebody has to have done that already, right?
I don't know that I've seen any. It's a good question. I don't know that I've actually seen any gaming for it. I guess Zach would probably be the right person to ask because I've not been following it too closely since its
Neither have
release.
I.
I'll be honest with you. But yeah, I mean that seems like a no-brainer. What kind of applications would you like to see for the Pebble, Dana?
For the Pebble smartwatch.
Mm-hmm.
I would like something having to do with air travel and airplanes.
Okay, that's a good one. So just
anything in general. Like you want like an altimeter and like a.
your flight's
The more you
delayed,
can pack in,
you
yeah,
get
the more
that.
the merrier.
Yeah, it
basically.
tells
You want to
if
be
you're-
able to land the plane from your watch.
You never know.
That's true. Pilots are passing out all the time. That's a good point. Annalee Newitz, the EIC of IO9, is going to be there.
Yep.
Pretty big one too. And Ben Huh, the CEO of Cheeseburger, the cat guy.
Yep.
Hopefully he'll wear that cheeseburger hat that he wears to every single event that he goes to.
If he doesn't, we're not letting him talk, right?
Oh no, yeah, he'll be immediately removed from the premises if that happens. But no, I mean this is if you go back and look at our initial announce for the San Francisco and see who was on there and contrast it to this, and I think it's shaping up to be a pretty good show, even though it's like 4 or 5 months out, something like that. So that's exciting. And speaking of actually the last Expand, our friends at Ziphius just got funded over on Kickstarter.
Woo!
Down to the wire.
Yeah, it was very, very close.
We were pretty worried there for a minute. I think they got fully funded with like 36 hours left or something like that.
Was it even that much?
I think
thought
it was
actually less than that.
I think it was like a little over a day they got funded. But yeah, that means that everybody who pledged to them at a certain level will be getting one come March, and we're excited to get our own version.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to fight over who actually gets to test it out, but I suspect probably not somebody in New York City.
Well, that's actually going to be part of this Expand, right? We're going to have a giant
Fight on
cage
stage.
match on stage to decide who gets the Ziphius.
I mean, we weren't until you've said that, but
now
certainly,
we
I
are.
mean, we've got some open slots right now, so that's certainly a possibility.
We'll talk after this. We'll work
Yeah.
some now. Okay.
Yeah, but in the meantime, oh my God, I was saying earlier that this week's show might as well just be the mobile podcast because pretty much everything that happened this week was in the smartphone space or in the mobile space.
Yeah.
Google, of course, had the big breakfast event.
What a weird thing that was.
Yeah.
By the way, just come have breakfast with us.
Which they didn't serve breakfast.
No.
It was my
officially did not-
understanding is that there was actually no breakfast.
Not even like
involved.
little baby quiches on platters. People walking
Sundar
around.
got on stage and actually said, like in the live blog, like, "I've already eaten. I hope you all have too."
Terrible.
Yeah,
Terrible.
they had jelly beans for breakfast. Man, the Wi-Fi is so awful in the office today. I'm just totally unable to actually load any of these stories. So big news, obviously, is the new Nexus 7.
Yep.
Looks great by all accounts, right?
Yeah. I kind of want to see if I can convince somebody to buy my old Nexus 7
Sure.
just so I can save a little bit of money buying my
Well,
new
it's
one.
what, $230? I mean, it's not too bad.
No.
It's thinner, it's faster, it's lighter. It's going to be the first one with 4.3 on it.
Yep.
Great. Looks
Yeah,
great.
that pretty much sums
I
it
know.
up. There's
I was
not much to
thinking
say
about
about
that.
it.
I was thinking about that ahead of the show. Like, it's like, oh yeah, great, good job, Google.
Yeah, it looks great. It was great in our hands-on.
Yeah.
We're reviewing it in a few days. It's probably going to be great there too.
Yeah,
It'll be the best tablet that $230 can buy.
yeah. I guess
You've written the headline already.
Yep.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Oh, good. We can all go home.
Yeah.
He's done your job for you, Dana.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess that's about all I have to say about the Nexus 7. It fits better in your hand.
Apparently,
That's
yeah.
nice.
It seems to have a little bit less personality from a design standpoint.
Yeah.
That like quilted back sort of thing is gone. But
I never liked quilted backs. I'm gonna
No.
be honest with you. That's for toilet paper.
yeah,
What's interesting to me is that this coexists with the Asus MemoPad HG7 because that's also a 7-inch tablet. It's also made by Asus. It has doesn't have Android 4.3 yet, but it's basically vanilla Android. I just wonder why both have to exist
So
at the same time.
Because I mean, I think any hardware manufacturer out there, say for Nokia or Apple, is probably going to jump at the opportunity to create a Nexus device.
yep.
And
Maybe HTC. They seem reticent to get back in that game.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the
But-
offer's been made
But
recently.
Asus did it last year, and this is a logical follow-up to the Nexus 7. It's the Nexus 7 II.
Yeah.
So it's just funny to me that they came up with something very similar at Computex and pitched it as the follow-up or replacement to the Nexus 7, which it kind of is in terms of specs, but not really because there only is one second-gen Nexus 7.
Yeah.
It's just funny to me that they both exist, and we have reviews of both again coming up.
Do they have the
so-
same resolution screen?
No.
Okay.
The other tablet has a lower res screen and also a lower price.
Okay.
Really
Well, I
low
mean-
in emerging markets. It's going to be 100.
I was going to say. I mean, I think that's the main difference right there. Right, is the markets are targeting because this obviously is going to be a big deal in the U.S.
Yeah.
I suspect that's probably going to be a bigger deal in Asia.
Yep.
And in developing markets. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Google's probably doing something to subsidize the cost here a little bit too.
Oh, actually, I had heard that unlike the original Nexus, they're actually making a little bit of money.
Oh, really?
They're not selling it at cost.
Yeah.
Or,
I mean,
taking
ultimately,
a loss
though,
on
I'm
it.
guessing that
It's
with
not a
Google's
huge one.
involvement, that it's gonna be a little bit, or that Asus is probably making a little bit more off of this than they had with the Nexus in the past. The big news from a software perspective, another thing that we kind of saw coming from a mile away was the release of Android 4.3. I think it's a little bit telling that wasn't the lead, that wasn't really the big news
Yeah.
of the event, that they kind of buried it under this, again, which is by all accounts a very nice tablet. But when you really dig down on this thing, there's not a lot of news on that front.
I think your first sign of that was that it wasn't announced at Google I/O
Yeah.
a couple months ago. I
Yep.
think
Yeah.
if they really had a lot to share, they would have done a blowout event then. But
Yeah.
again, they just sort of squeezed it in. You're right.
Yeah. And the reason why they squeezed it in was because this is going to be shipping with the new Nexus 7. I think over the air updates yesterday to a select number of Nexus devices.
Yeah, I haven't seen it on my Nexus 7 yet,
Okay.
but supposedly it started rolling out yesterday to the Nexus 4 and Nexus 7 and Nexus 10.
Galaxy Nexus. yeah, again, like not a huge amount of news. This isn't a big upgrade. It's still Jelly Bean, which is also kind of telling.
It supports a new Bluetooth standard. There's certain under the hood tweaks.
The Bluetooth thing is big though. That's kind of huge. I mean, it's not a banner feature to add. It's not something that Google's going to like break out the confetti for.
It's not sexy.
No, it's not sexy, but it's pretty big.
We can all agree on that. It's not sexy.
But I mean, that's one of the things that Apple has been kind of pounding a lot of the Android devices on is Bluetooth 4.0 and Bluetooth Low Energy, because they've nailed that wearables market basically, because all of them work with the iPod Touch or the iPhone 5, and none of them work with Android devices, save for the Galaxy S4, basically.
The other big news from the software hardware perspective on that front is support for OpenGLES, which is good. It's gonna be a nice tweak for a lot of these games. They showed off a lot of demos. There were lens flares and water on the screen, all
sorts of fancy
Abrams effects that you could possibly want in your gaming. And then I guess actually what they let off with was the new age profiles on here. So this is something that pretty much every single manufacturer who has an Android device has already added to their skin of the UI. So now this is something that's baked into it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's nice. It's probably something that should have been in there all along. I think probably this comes with their continued push towards tablets, because a tablet is the kind of device that you're going to want to share with your kids, especially if it's a $230 Nexus tablet, versus handsets, which you're probably not passing around as much.
Yeah. I mean, they made the first steps towards that with the addition of user profiles at all, and now they have the lockdown one. It seemed like this was a lot of Google playing catch up with everybody else, what they've done to Android.
Yeah, exactly. Is adding some of the skinned add-on features to the base version of it. And then big news for people who like high def movies is Netflix streaming in 1080p.
Yeah. I don't know how badly you need 1080p streaming.
Ultimately, I don't know either.
Whatever.
I think people are going to be excited about it. It is kind of strange to me though to roll out your mobile operating system and have one of the big features be streaming of this proprietary company that you don't own. It's just it's kind of just a weird. I don't know. It's a weird connection there.
It's a good match for the Nexus 7. It makes a good case for that very pixel-rich screen that they're pushing so heavily.
Sure. Yeah, it's just, point upgrade.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well,
yeah, nothing to get too super excited about.
Where it will come in kind of handy, though, is the Chromecast. That's the one place where it kind of makes sense.
But if you're streaming it directly from the cloud, does it matter if you have 1080p streaming on your handset?
Well, yeah, because you can stream it from the handset to the TV in 1080p, and if you're not pulling it down in 1080p in the first place, then you're clearly not going to actually get it out on the other end. Now, this means
so it's not doing any rendering on the back end, is what you're saying.
So then again, you have to be the sort of person who wants to stream Netflix to their phone and then display it from their phone to their television, as opposed to owning a Roku or Apple TV or having Netflix baked into your TV to begin with. And I'm not entirely sure how large of a market that is.
I mean, that said, I think the Chromecast is an incredibly appealing device from them. I mean, we're talking about. It's also a total. It's an about face from the Nexus Q, which they came out last year, which was let's roll out with the most expensive
useless product
streaming device we come up with. Obviously, it didn't work, and they ended up giving a lot away. They probably still got a warehouse full of them. So
I'll take one if they do.
Yeah,
just send it to me. It's very pretty. I'll just use it as a
pull down
piece.
some papers on your coffee table, for example. But this is a dongle. It's an HDMI dongle that you stick in the back
of the
set.
I would buy one
for $35.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
I happen to not have anything like a Roku box or any sort of set-top box like that. I don't have an Apple TV. I would actually like to have Netflix on my TV. I'm a fairly techie person. I just happen to not own a set-top box. So I think there actually are people who would use this.
I'm sure there are. It seems like an increasingly small market, and it seems like a weird way to go about it. Rather than go directly for the TV like they did with Google TV, which clearly still isn't going very well for them. It seems like a weird thing that they just go, well, what if we get this wireless thing and you can stream stuff from your phone to the TV and chew through your phone battery?
It's a little more roundabout. You're pulling it from the cloud, though, ultimately.
from the cloud to your phone, and then from the phone.
You're
to the
selecting
TV.
the videos with your handset. And
I don't
then it's
worry
pulling
about
those
battery
videos from the
life
cloud.
since you can use it with a laptop, because in a living room scenario, that's very likely, actually, that your laptop is plugged in, or maybe even your tablet or phone is plugged in.
That's where to me it seems a little bit more useful is on the tablet, not on the tablet, on the desktop, on like a computer. But for the moment, that only works with YouTube. And I mean, not that I have not had people over my house and gathered around the TV to be like, "Hey, you've got to see this ridiculous video. Let's all watch goats laughing like humans." On my 50-inch TV, but it's still a relatively rare case.
Yeah.
So you're saying that even for just YouTube on your desktop, in addition to the smartphone and the fact that no doubt all this other streaming is going to be coming onto the desktop and the laptops in probably the near future, you don't think that $35 plus 3 months of Netflix is an enticing proposition?
Oh, I'm not saying it's not enticing. I think I still need to be convinced personally. I think it's almost there. If you could stream Netflix from your laptop,
Which I can't imagine is more than like a couple of months away.
I'd hope so. That would be
Yeah.
great. If they add that, if they like get some of the big, if they make it work with web video, period. If I could pull up the latest episode of Frontline or Nova on my laptop and send it to my TV, I'd be sold. But
Sure, and
on
again,
YouTube
like
alone.
this can't really be that far off. I mean, the fact that you could do multitasking while you're playing those videos on the TV is also really cool as well. So you can, you can play a YouTube video on there while you're still kind of flipping through your phone looking for the next YouTube video for you to play. I mean, that's really cool functionality.
Yeah.
This is great. I think they're going to sell a ton of these. I know you think it's kind of a niche thing, but I think they're going to sell a ton of these. I really do.
I think the price point is right. So the
price point is basically free. That's what the price point is.
Yeah.
It's $35 minus 3 free months of Netflix. So, yeah.
It's cheap enough that it's an impulse thing, and that's sort of like
It's going to be a huge gift.
Yep.
You know, $35.
If they put these in checkout lines at Best Buy,
Yeah.
they'll sell millions and millions of them super quick.
Just make the packaging simple, even enough for, my family to understand.
I was doing the math in my head of how cheap it would be for me to actually, because I don't own a television, how cheap it would be for me to just buy a flat screen TV with an HDMI input to just stream stuff from, because I'm doing all my watching on my laptop anyway.
Yeah.
So how cheap it would be for me to be able to do that, so I can still kind of work on my computer.
I don't think I knew that you had no TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been about a dozen years since I've had a TV in my home. That's why I didn't interview for Richard's job when I first got here. Couple of other, I guess, relatively smaller announcements that go along with that. In addition to the Chromecast announcement, the partners, as we said, were Netflix, obviously all the proprietary Google stuff. So
yeah.
Google Play, Google Plus, YouTube, and Pandora
is coming. Not available at launch.
And they opened up the SDK immediately as well for people to get on that.
Which they're always pretty good about. Google is
and I think people are going to jump on the opportunity to get on this thing. I think everybody realizes that this is going to be a pretty successful product.
You know who will probably drag their feet? Hulu.
I was thinking that.
Yeah, until
they
Google
seem like an
buys
obvious
them.
exception.
Yeah, they're always late to the party.
It's
on that
funny.
Sort of stuff.
Somebody pointed out on Twitter that Netflix and Pandora are literally the first two applications to jump on any platform, regardless of what it is.
Especially Pandora, even more so than Netflix. Pandora
Rhapsody was for a while too.
Yeah.
Rhapsody was pretty good about that. RDO, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of music on there. That makes a lot of sense to just be able to stream like Spotify or something through your home stereo system. Yeah. Really, really cool product. I'm thinking of buying one. I don't even have a TV. Just to have it around, just to fit in with everybody else who's going to own one.
Want to hold it and think about what it would be like.
Yeah, to own a television. Yeah, I've got a good imagination. I've got a good enough imagination that I can imagine owning a TV. That's what I like to use my imagination towards. You wrote up Google Play Games. So you want to kind of dive into that a little bit?
Not really, but no? I mean. There's just not much.
It's an app to bring together games.
Yeah, I mean, there's just not much to say about it, really. That's sort of the thing. It's just a self-contained front end for the stuff they debuted at I/O with leaderboards and challenging your friends to stuff. The thing is, I don't really know how popular any of that is.
It's Game Center, basically.
Yeah, it's Game Center, it seems like it's taking it like a step further. It seems like it might be a little bit more self-contained because it looks like you can launch just about any game from there. So it might be a little bit more like Steam in that sense. But
on a much smaller level.
Yeah, on a much smaller level.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know how popular something like that is on the mobile front because I personally don't play a lot of games on my phone or my tablet.
I do, but I have never signed into Game Center.
Yeah,
I could care less about leaderboards. But again,
I mean, I guess there's got to
probably
be
younger than us. We're in our late 50s, so I'm sure there's a lot of 40-year-olds out there who are excited about something like this. Yeah, it's cool. I think it'll do well.
Oh yeah, I mean. I installed it immediately just cause, and I haven't yet to actually launch it.
Yeah. Textbooks coming to Google Play, another no-brainer.
I'm kind of amazed that took so long.
I was actually surprised that it wasn't on there already when I heard this. I
was like, wait, that was not a thing?
Me too.
Yeah. Because especially when we're talking about the Nexus 7, when we're talking about a $230 tablet, something that's probably going to be further discounted.
Yeah.
I guess it's because Google has been focusing on Chromebooks for education for the most part. That seems to be their big push in there.
Yeah, and that's gone really well. It's doing great.
I mean,
no, it actually has. It's gone pretty well for them.
Yeah, all things considered. I mean, that's certainly where Chromebooks.
It's gone better for them than in the consumer space.
Well, in the consumer space, it's not going very well. But I don't think they ever really meant it for the consumer space. Really,
I think they mean it now, but they didn't before.
The Pixel's a different thing.
Well, they meant it for business people who travel a lot in schools. I mean, those are really the two places. And it makes sense. It makes sense for schools. It's a really, really affordable laptop.
Oh, absolutely. The thing is that sitting down and reading a textbook on a laptop is not always ideal. The tablet form factor makes a lot more sense.
Yep. Agreed.
So,
I have the Nokia next, but actually, let's move on to Motorola because I think that was bigger news for the week. So
wait, there was Nokia news? Didn't we just?
It's just a review of the. We'll talk about that. Yeah, the 1020 got reviewed. It happens. Right. They announce things and then they get reviewed later. That's generally the process here at Engadget, Terrence.
Is it? I'm not familiar with this.
Back me up on this. Things get announced and then we review them.
Yeah, and then the reviews go up at midnight because the companies say so. And then you don't notice it because those are that's one of the 2 hours you're not monitoring our site obsessively.
Okay. Although, Nokia, so, all of our Finnish readers will probably be reading that when it goes up.
Yeah.
And voting for it to be the best cell phone of the year.
Yep.
Sure.
Reader's choice.
Yeah.
It's a great cell phone. Again, we're going to get around to that. Right now we're talking about an American company, Motorola. Got a little bit of pride there. 3 handsets. Anybody surprised that they came out with 3 at the same time?
Nope.
No.
3
seems to be the magic number to me. I mean, that seems like a good number of phones to have on the market at one time. Right?
Yeah, although, I mean, I've never quite gotten Motorola's strategy here. I felt this way with the Razr HD and the Max last year. If you have 2 very similar looking phones with very similar attributes, except one has a bigger battery, is the point of having the regular Razr type phone just to be able to sell the thinness mostly?
I think it's partially on the thinness, and it's probably also price. They probably can't sell it.
Remember, you wrote the review of those 2 phones last year, and they
did.
were so similar we bundled them into one review.
And we'll probably do the same with these 2.
Right, so why not make
the announcement?
Yeah.
I would just love to see one awesome flagship phone from them that's, that size and has great battery life. It's sort of funny that
which I think they have. I mean, I don't think they're undercutting that necessarily by having a second phone. I think I think 3 is a good number. 1 is probably not great.
Enough.
And then the Samsung approach obviously is probably way too much unless you have as much money as God, which Samsung does and is clearly able to do that. So 3 seems like a pretty good number. At the very least, the difference between the Max and the Mini makes a lot of sense to have two different screen sizes.
Well, especially because the Mini follows up the Razr M. That's actually the phone I still carry. But it was I understand it was a big success last fall. It got great reviews from people like us.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people bought it. It was a successful phone, and for good reason. It was just a decent, solid little phone that was great for people like me who prefer something a little smaller.
Yeah, it's really a top-notch device. My fiance carries it and uses it every day. It was cheap.
It was sort of a sleeper hit because it was priced as a mid-range device at the time. It was something like $99 on contract, so you wouldn't have expected it to be a phone.
Which is the Mini price, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Mini is the Razr M, more or less.
We don't usually love mid-range, mid-tier phones that much, but this one we really liked, and hopefully this one is better. My only concern is that it has something like a 2,000 milliamp battery, so I'm not confident this is going to address the short battery life on the current version. That's what I like least about the phone, actually, is that the battery always dies before I get home at night.
Can we take a moment to point out the fact that a 4.3-inch phone is now being referred to as a mini?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we are now?
Yeah. 2 years ago, I bought the Razer, the Droid X, which was the biggest phone on the market.
Yep.
And that was 4.3 inches.
Yeah. So the larger two are 5. I mean, I'll say this for Motorola, and I know obviously Motorola's got a big way to go as far as making up market share, but they're focusing on, I think, the two things that all companies need to focus on right now, which are making it rugged and giving a longer battery life.
Yep.
48 hours is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, to me, being able to go through a day without having to plug my phone is crazy.
I don't even remember what that's like.
So the thought of a 48-hour battery is pretty nuts. You know, $299 is a pretty good price point, I think, for the handset.
Yeah.
Good job, Motorola.
Good job, Motorola.
I will say I think this is kind of interesting though on a software perspective, that a couple of the announcements were actually centered around skins to Android, which to me is kind of funny from coming from a company that's owned by Google, right?
Yeah. Well, their skinned version of Android is still pretty bare bones, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more or less vanilla Android with a couple of minor tweaks.
Like two fingers to upload a file. Things like that.
They have a couple of like the nicer like features that get baked into things like TouchWiz without all of the excessive,
You don't feel like you're relearning Android when you use it.
I don't have to explain to somebody, no, I swear this is actually Android still. It's just that it's a Samsung, or it's just that it's a Nexus or anything like that.
Is this Google proving to people that they're not going to have too much of a hand in the future of Motorola, or is it just,
I think this is just leftover stuff, basically. This is them working their way through what they had on.
Well, because that's my question then. Does this mean that like 6 months, a year from now, the next Motorola handset we're going to see is basically going to have vanilla Android on it?
Entirely possible. I think you might see some of these features carry over. I think you might see it go even...
You're not going to see more piled on top of that?
Yeah, you might see some of these features get baked into vanilla Android. I would not be shocked.
That's an interesting concept, that you can use Motorola phones as kind of a
test bed for future...
Yeah, sandbox. That's not the right word for it, but a lab sort of thing.
Yeah. Like the OK Google Now thing or whatever, where you can just talk... Like, that's an amazing, amazing thing that I'm sure at...
Well, and that clearly is an Android feature. It's not Droid. It's not Go Droid Go, right?
Yeah, it's going to come to Android at some point. Like, if that doesn't happen, then I will lose all faith in Google because I don't know what they're doing.
I do think I do think from one perspective it does make sense for them to keep skinning this, because that's something that Google supported from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's open source, so that's the whole idea. I mean, if you're a hardware manufacturer, you want some way to set it apart. So maybe they'll keep doing nice little tweaks to it to try to set it apart from other handsets. That's about all I got from Motorola.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I could say that was sort of a little bit upsetting to me coming out of it, though, was only the Max maintained that like matte Kevlar body that made the Razer Max and the Razer HD like just phenomenally feeling pieces of hardware, and the same for the Razer M. Like, they felt nice. They felt like premium devices. And for whatever reason, on the Ultra and the Mini, they decided, let's go back to glossy. Like, it's still Kevlar, but it's glossy and it's smooth. And companies don't learn about glossy materials. It's a terrible thing.
So it sounds like it has less of an industrial look.
Absolutely.
This time.
It's I like that though. I like the idea of like, because I feel like Nokia might be doing this too. Is like, let's make our premium devices matte. Let's make our budget devices glossy.
Oh, I mean, that's...
So it's like, so people who run into you on the street will know what a cheapskate you are. Like, aside from like, the hardware inside, let's also make it not look quite as good.
Yeah.
So people know you're
push
getting a
everybody
budget
to the $300 phone.
Yeah, exactly.
If only that worked for PCs.
Speaking of Nokia, so this is what we've threatened to actually circle back to. So Brad put up a pretty in-depth review of the Nokia 1020.
It's a pretty bang-up review, yeah.
Brad wrote an in-depth review. He didn't half-ass it. You sure?
Well, I'm saying Brad spent a lot of
when
time.
When Brad tells me that he wrote a short review, I take it with a grain of salt, because by short he means he only wrote 2,500 words.
You only have to set aside like 3 days to edit it.
Yeah.
He did. I guess it's more of a surprise as he really took on the camera section for this one too, because obviously that's the point.
Yeah,
that's the whole point of the 1020. Just to kind of to cut to the end of it. Best Windows handset.
It seems like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The tougher question is, I think, for people who have been toying with the idea of switching to Windows Phone, is the amazing camera here, and the just overall flagshipiness of this reason enough to switch to Windows Phone. And that, Brad makes a good point. It really depends how much you want the best camera, the best smartphone camera.
Yeah.
In your hands.
I do like the fact that made you say the word flagshipy, which is also pretty fantastic.
Flagshipy.
Got coined on this show. Yeah, if you've been toying with the idea of moving over to Windows anyway, you might as well. And certainly, it's a better operating system than it was, this time last year. It's a perfectly good operating system. But yeah, if how many people ultimately is the idea of a better camera enough to actually bring people over? Because all of the flagship smartphones out there have pretty nice cameras right now. So how much picture taking do you do? How important is low light to you?
I don't know. I assume there's got to be somebody, or they wouldn't even be bothering.
Obviously Nokia.
I assume they're doing market research, and that research is telling them people want really fancy phones in their cameras in their phones. Phones in their cameras would be a much different device.
Sure.
Samsung's
that would be a Samsung device. Yeah. All hardware manufacturers have to do something to set themselves apart from everybody else at this point.
Yeah.
Again, Motorola is doing battery life and making them a little more rugged, and Nokia is focusing their efforts almost entirely on cameras.
Fortunately, if you look at the review card, it's actually a pretty good phone in other respects too. It has great battery life. Whereas if you look at something like the Galaxy S4 Zoom, we did not give it a very fond review. We've succeeded in taking some good test shots with it, but there were just other problems with the phone. So I don't know if people will switch over to Windows Phone for this camera, but it's definitely an all-around great option for people who are into Windows Phone. Kudos to Nokia at least for not skimping on, everything else.
Yeah, we talked to Elop about it. God, what was that? A week or two ago now? I can't.
It was last week, I think.
Is that last week? Okay.
Yeah.
It's all...
Everything's a blur.
No, it was 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's 2 weeks ago. Everything is a blur.
Yeah, it's been a weird month.
Yeah. It's mostly because we've been drunk this whole time.
Yeah, it's mostly because of all the alcohol poisoning that we've experienced. Yeah, but that's what they said. And we asked them point blank whether they felt like they were sacrificing other features on the phone because they've been focusing so much on camera. And as he answered, and I think it's pretty apt, is that they've been focusing on those other things all along, and they've been building on it with each subsequent handset, which is probably part of the reason why we see so many handsets coming out from Nokia.
If they sacrificed anything here, it's the actual ergonomics, what it feels like to hold it. For the people listening at home, this is not just a good camera, but it's a good camera that takes up like a third of the backside of the phone and protrudes from it. I haven't held it myself, but I can't imagine.
Yeah, I have.
Because people, you have, I know you've gotten hands on.
Yeah.
But people complained even about the Lumia 920, which did not have this honking camera on the back. But people even complained that was sort of heavy and cumbersome to hold. So I can only imagine what the compromise is like here. And it's not a tiny compromise, the ergonomics of a phone, because you're holding it all the time.
Yeah, I don't think the ergonomics are an issue. I think it feels fine in your hand. I think,
assuming you've got a big, manly hand, right?
Yeah, I have pretty dainty hands.
Yeah.
I think the issue is more just carrying around your pocket, because there's a big nub sticking out at all times.
I haven't held it, but the camera just looks like it's weirdly placed too. It looks like you would just it looks like I would constantly be rubbing my hand on the lens, which is not something you probably want to be doing with your 41 megapixel,
Yeah,
camera.
it does have a shutter on it. It's also, though, it's interesting. Yeah, I guess it's almost kind of positioned like a flip cam in a way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably going to be doing a lot of stuff in portrait mode. But I mean, where would you put it? It seems to be in the most logical place that you could put a camera on the back of a phone.
I suppose if you had to put a camera this big in a phone,
which you do, which you are legally by Finnish law you are required to do. Go on.
No, that's it.
That's it. That's the end of that thought.
That's it.
Okay. It's a great phone, but I guess ultimately you are making a few sacrifices for the camera. So yeah, if cameras mean a lot to you, I guess, and you don't mind going over Windows, then by all means jump on it. I mean, to me, again, we talked about this a little bit last time, but to me, the big deal about this camera isn't so much these gigantic images, because what are people actually going to end up doing with those, so much as this kind of cool idea of being able to just snap a photo of something and zoom in and zoom out, and not have to worry about framing it while you're taking it. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. No, yeah, enough to make you throw your phone in the garbage and pick up a 1020.
Obviously,
yeah.
I don't even know why.
I don't know why you're still here. Yeah. I don't know why you haven't left the podcast. I think we can actually wrap it up right there.
Are you sure?
Well, let's open it up to questions. I guess we could talk about one more thing that I've got on my docket. So yeah, stick some questions in chat if you are so inclined. And in the meantime, we could talk about the Samsung Galaxy S4 Mini, which I think Brad also reviewed. Yep,
He's been on a roll, and he's also been on a quasi vacation. I think his wife is ready to. Get him in his sleep.
I'm actually pretty sure he's already dead. This is our.
I mean, I feel like sending her flowers just to say sorry for all the reviews.
And if he did, and if God forbid he did die, I think we'd probably still be able to squeeze one more phone review out of him, right?
Yeah. So the Mini, it sounds like if it were priced a bit lower, it's an unlocked handset that we reviewed. It sounds like if it were priced a bit lower, we would have appreciated it a bit more. But it is. No question. It's not the Galaxy S4 shrunken down. It's a much more mid-range phone on the inside. And compared to other unlocked handsets that are supposed to be mid-range, it's
how much?
Let's check that out.
It's $520.
It's a deal. That's unlocked, though.
Well, you could buy a Nexus 4. And not deal with touch.
I mean, that's again, like there are two things that Samsung does in pretty much everything, which is premium price.
Brad gives the example that the GS3 with North American LTE costs somewhere between $430 and $450.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean Samsung. Yeah. I mean Samsung's always done a premium price. I mean that's never how the company has really attempted to set itself apart. Like it'll be competing against the iPad or the iPhone, and we'll price it similarly. And the other thing that Samsung has always done is just again come out with as many devices as possible.
Just shotgun.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this is. It's a smaller version of the S4 with worse specs.
Yeah.
It's a mid-range phone with a premium price.
Yes.
Boom.
Bravo.
I just wrote the bottom line.
Yeah. You could have just written the review, really.
Just
Brad didn't need to
just do the thing.
Next
we could have saved
we'll
Brad's.
Review the HTC Mini, and maybe we'll have the exact same conversation.
Yeah.
Do you think so?
I don't know. I think the difference there is, though, HTC has a much more stripped-down software that I think probably under the mid-range specs won't be so sluggish and painful to use. Mm-hmm. And their devices always feel much nicer, like just in the hand. So if nothing else, I think that alone is going to set it apart from this, because the GS4, the GS3, and they might be high-end phones, but build quality has never been our favorite feature of a Samsung device. Mm-hmm. They're very attached to their thin plastics. Whereas HTC, the HTC One is a premium feeling device. Say what you will about any other feature on it, it feels nice.
I'm laughing because Joseph is reviewing the 10-inch Galaxy Tab 3 right now, and he's so dissatisfied with the sort of glassy, fingerprint-prone back that he actually wishes Samsung would bring back the plastic. Maybe a topic for another podcast.
Should we get Joseph in here?
I don't think it's possible to make Joseph happy. I think that's probably the moral to that story.
Yeah.
He's listening. I expect him to chime in any second.
He's been IMing me this whole time, demanding that I talk about One Direction.
I invited you. Tell him that I invite him onto the podcast.
If my MacBook would let me switch windows, I would.
Is he so? Yeah, come on in, Joseph. Talk about. No, it's fine. We're rounding the end of this
slowly but surely. There we go.
What All Day News wants to know: what phone would you take off the market but happens to have great potential? I don't know what that means. What phone would you take off the market but happens to have great potential?
I don't understand
know.
what that means. I'm sorry. Maybe rephrase that
before. Okay.
Again, I'm waiting
she
for this
also
to
wants to
change.
know if this was Survivor, who would get kicked off the podcast first and why.
I don't know.
Joe's wearing a hat that says dope on it, so I think that's probably the answer to that question.
He's also off camera, so people would probably be like, who is that guy? Vote him off.
Nobody would miss him. All right, and that's it for questions. Thanks, everybody.
That was amazingly insightful.
Yeah. People in the comment section want you to know that that the content isn't mirrored from your device, that it is in fact coming down from the cloud.
Directly to the
It's from the cloud to the Chromecast.
So you're telling the Chromecast to pull it down.
Yeah. You're basically you're sending that information into the cloud. So again, 1080p on Android 4.3 would have ultimately, I don't think, any bearing on
okay. So
the
then it is
stream.
a very strange feature. I come back.
It's more if you watch the demos, it's more. I mean, I don't think it's a strange feature. It's it's not a bad feature.
No, it's not bad.
It's
just
hugely appealing feature for everybody.
No,
but it's more. I mean, if you think of the Chromecast more in like.
Well, I meant
your phone is a remote control more than it is a content delivery device.
Which I mean, they've had that for various things. I meant that the 1080p video streaming to Android is a slightly weird feature then, because I think on a 4-inch screen it just doesn't make much of a difference.
Yeah, or a
especially
7-inch screen maybe.
I mean, on a 7-inch screen it might be a little bit more noticeable, but even still.
It's a weird feature to be one of the top 3 features of the latest version of your.
If it was just something you kick through and they're like, "Hey, we have all these things. By the way, it also streams 1080p video now." It doesn't seem like it should have been something that was an Android announcement. It should have seemed like something that's a Netflix announcement. They'd be like, "Hey, we updated our app. It does 1080p now." It shouldn't have been a key point that Google brought up on stage.
Yeah, I mean, except that it only for people with 4.3, right? It's not. It wouldn't be an update across the app. Okay, here's a rephrase. Here we go. What current gen phone are you excited about but let you down big time? Okay, that's a fair question.
That would have to
Galaxy
be the HTC One.
S4, I mean, HTC really?
Yeah.
Let you down?
Kinda.
How's that?
I think the speakers are great. I think the build quality is great. I think, unfortunately, while they've stripped down the Sense quite a bit and made it a little bit closer, the default view that you can get rid of, granted, but the that Metro tile thing,
that's social,
that's kind of useless and terrible. And
there's a vanilla version of it.
Yes, I know. Yeah. But the other thing, and the reason I would never spring for that is the 2 buttons. It's bad enough that you guys are constantly changing minor little things in the software for interfaces, but you've actually removed a hardware button now from the standard Android layout. Why? You are just complicating matters so much more than they need to be. Was it hard?
I think people were sick of buttons. I think there were too many buttons. I think people got fed up, and I think HTC is addressing that problem.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think the number one complaint about smartphones today is how many buttons they have.
Obviously, that's